Hi yogis and yoginis, Ashley Josephine here. Today I want to talk to you about improving your yoga practice. Now this is a question that I get all the time from my students in the studios that I teach at, from my private clients, from some of you readers and video watchers on YouTube and on my blog. And this is a really hard question to answer because it's going to look different for every single person. The process for improving your yoga practice, there's no one set way to do it. And it's an individualized practice in that sense. So there's not one answer to give you to improve your yoga practice. But I've thought a lot about this, and I think I've got a pretty good generalized answer that can apply to everyone, no matter where you are. And I'm going to take us through a sun salutation, a basic sun salutation A, explore a couple postures in sun salutation B, and talk a little bit about very general things that we can think about in these postures as a way to help us improve our practice. Now, the first thing that I need to say before we go any further is that improving your practice does not mean doing the postures right. And I've written a blog post about this, and I titled it How to Do Postures Right, or something like that. But in the blog post itself, when you read it, you'll find that I'm not actually telling you how to do a posture right. And I encourage you to be wary of anybody who tells you that you have to do a posture one particular way, unless they're able to give you a really sound, good reason for why it is that they're having you do it that way. Everybody is different, every body is different, so there can't be one way for every single body to do a posture. For example, I have a little bit of scoliosis. Because of that, my spine functions a little bit differently than somebody else's spine who doesn't have that curvature. If you have arthritis in the hips, your hips just aren't going to move the way that my hips move with no arthritis. So it's impossible to say that your posture is going to or needs to look like the posture of the teacher in the front of the room or the posture of your best friend on the mat next to you. So the first thing about improving your practice is understanding and accepting that your practice is uniquely and individually yours, which means your body and your posture is going to uniquely look different in the most subtle and slight ways than every other person in the room. And that's great, but it's hard for the mind to accept because we want to be told what to do. It's easier that way. And we have this obsession with perfection. We don't like ugly yoga. I call it ugly yoga. We don't like looking like something's off or wrong, but there's nothing wrong. We just have to shift our mindset and our perception about that word right and wrong and doing the posture the right way. Doing the posture the right way for you is understanding where your body is in space. So here's where we get to how you improve your yoga practice. Improving your yoga practice is about understanding where your body is in space, building this relationship with your body. So many of us are in our mind all the time. We sit at our desk, we're really good at our jobs, we love what we do, we're constantly thinking, and we use our heads and our brains to succeed in this world. We forget about the rest of the body. Or perhaps we have some type of physical practice. We're running, we're cycling, we're crossfitting, we're working out, we're lifting weights, which is great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we understand the body as an integrated whole, that we have a connection, a really deep connection with understanding and feeling our body. And it's quite typical and common for certain people, just based on their life experiences, to completely ignore a particular part of their body, not because they're doing it on purpose, just because they haven't had a need to use that body, part of the body, or to understand that part of the body for the daily activities that they have. So let me show you something. I see this a lot with beginners, and it's totally cool. As a beginner, I would expect you to do this. I'm going to do a sun salutation, a really basic sun salutation for you. I'll do it from the side so that you can kind of see everything going on. If I'm the teacher and I'm at the front of the room and I say, inhale, reach your arms up overhead, I see a lot of people do this, right? They've inhaled, they've brought their arms up overhead, and they've listened to me, and they're doing exactly what I've told them to do, right? Arms overhead, great. But like, look at the hands here. This is really common to see people not really paying attention to the hands being up. And no, I might not have said like put your hands or your fingers, point your fingers straight up. But just bringing the arms up overhead, there's like no awareness or integration between the arm and the hands. So there's these floppy hands, right? And then if I say forward fold, I'll see this, like, okay, we'll just forward fold down to the ground. There's like no integration in the rest of the body there. it looks a lot different than inhale, reach your arms up overhead. Right, I have this awareness of where my hands are, how my wrists are connected to my arms, where my shoulders are. The rest of my body is really strong. I'm grounded through the feet, strong in the core and the legs. My whole body is integrated. I have an awareness of the entire body here. And then exhale, forward fold, right? I'm continuing to ground down through the feet, coming down with the flat back, slowly folding forward, releasing the head and the neck, and that's my forward fold. So developing that control in the body is all about understanding the relationship between your feet and your knees and your hips and your core and your ribs and your shoulders and your neck and your spine and the entire body. And that can take some time to develop. It can take some time to understand where your body is in space. And it's going to change day to day. So how do you improve your practice? You start to become aware of all the different parts of your body and how they work together. So do this with me. Place your feet right underneath your sit bones, about 2 fists distance apart. First of all, understanding that about 2 fists distance apart for most people generally is a good indication of hip width distance. And just pressing down and bringing some awareness to the feet. Feeling some strength in the legs so we're not just hanging out. And allowing the spine to grow tall and finding this nice posture. And letting the shoulders rest back in a neutral position. Just standing here in a neutral position in a mountain pose like this, we could stay here as a beginner for an entire 60-minute yoga class and become aware of all the different parts of the body and completely change your perspective on how you feel in your body. And that would be a great start to improving your practice, because this is where we start in everything, right? We can do plank from this position. We need this upward movement, this energy moving upward, this strength in the lower and the upper body for all of our standing postures. We need this for our balancing postures. We need this for our arm balances and our inversions, right? This is an inversion upside down. If I put my hands on the ground and I'm in handstand, I still need this awareness of the entire body. When I'm kicking up into handstand or a more complex posture, if I don't have that awareness of my core, the integration of the entire body, I'm going to flop around and I'll get frustrated because I'm never going to stick or land that handstand for more than a couple seconds if I'm lucky. So how do you improve your practice? How do you progress to these more complex postures? It's all about feeling that integration at a much deeper, more subtle level. And that's really hard to teach because we have to come to the mat and practice over and over and over again. So let's go through a couple sun salutations. We'll look at warrior 1 and maybe a warrior 2. Place your feet right underneath your sit bones. On your inhale, reach your arms up overhead into mountain. Feel the feet really press down into the mat. Feel the spine grow long. Take a deep breath in and keep a long spine as you fold forward, aware of the integration between the hips and the spine as you come all the way down, releasing the arms down to the ground. And who cares where they touch? They don't have to touch the ground, but are you still aware of the feet? Are you still strong in the legs? Are you allowing the lower back to release? Do you feel that release of tension? And can you release the head and the neck? Then come to a halfway lift, and in a halfway lift, I want you to find a long spine again. So that means taking all the rounding out of the spine. I see a lot of people kind of here where they're rounding through the upper shoulders. Allow yourself to press into your hands and pull the shoulder blades back. So becoming aware of the shoulder blades and how they function with the collarbone, they're connected actually, and how that lengthens the rest of the spine, and feeling the length of the lower back moving into the thoracic back spine, having an understanding of this whole part of the upper back. And then exhale, fold forward, relax your head and your neck. Press down into the feet, get really strong through the feet as you rise all the way up. Again, understanding that articulation between the hips and the spine. Take another big breath in and a big breath out. And we haven't even talked about breathing mechanics from the breath, which is arguably even more important than any of these postures. That's another video. So step your right foot forward and your left foot back and come into warrior 1. Now warrior 1, a lot of times you'll hear teachers say for the heels to be in alignment, one right in front of the other. And you can do it that way, but you don't have to do it that way. And in fact, for a lot of people, it's easier on the knees to take a slightly wider stance. So I prefer a slightly wider stance for my body, my hips, my knees. And you're really looking at this, or building an awareness of the hips. So you'll hear teachers say, bring your hips forward towards the front of the room or the front of your mat. We want our hips to be facing forward, our arms overhead in a warrior one. Well, to do that, you need internal rotation of this back hip and external rotation of the front hip. So the front hip is pulling back behind you, the back hip is pulling forward. You've got to understand the rotational ability of your hips, but to do that safely, you have to really be pressing down into the back foot. You have to ground through the back foot and create that anchor, that foundation. The knee has to be basically in a line with the hips, which is going to change the angle of your foot. Otherwise, you could be putting some stress on the knee joint and all the ligaments and the tendons around the knee. And then what's going on in this front leg? You know, we spend so much time on the back leg kind of setting up that foundation. What about this front leg coming into the lunge? It's okay if you're back here. Maybe you can lunge a little bit further, but are you taking all the weight forward and putting a ton of stress on this knee? We want to keep the joints stacked if we can. And again, really grounding down, creating this really strong foundation underneath the feet. The legs, the muscles in the legs are really working. The core is engaged here. We're not just kind of hanging out and then reaching the arms up overhead. And now we're in a really strong, controlled warrior one versus just kind of like not really understanding where the body is and having the legs all over the place. Let's try the other side. Now, if you're a beginner, that's fine. That's where you're going to start. Accept that that's where you're going to be and have this curiosity and this willingness to go from feet all the way up to the head and ask yourself these questions like, where's my foot? What's going on with my knee? Are my muscles engaged in my leg and my core? Where are my shoulders in relationship to every other part of my body? Can I feel my hands overhead? Am I spreading my fingers wide, or is there no energy in the arms? This is how you improve your practice, by going very systematically through every different part of the body and allowing your mind to visualize all these different parts of the body. Understanding how to engage these muscles that maybe you've never felt before, and that's okay, that's exciting. And then coming back to the mat again and again and again, and exploring more and more and more, and working on your breath and learning how to breathe, even if you think you already know how to. And then notice, one side to the other, your body might be different. And that's okay too, because our body is not necessarily symmetrical. And forcing your body to be one way on one side as it is on the other side is the most likely way to cause or create injury in the body. So not only are you engaging these muscles, but then to improve in your practice from there, are you able to find this balance between engagement and ease? So another thing I see is if you do start to build some of this control of the body, I see people really tense and creating that control by tensing their muscles as much as they can. And you even see it, like their brows are furrowed and they have this really intense gaze on their face. And that's fine, that means that you're engaging, but can you loosen up a little bit and enjoy yourself in a posture without losing that control? And that's the ultimate expression of yoga, is finding that balance between the effort and the ease, the stira and sukha, the Sanskrit words for that. And all of yoga is this paradox, is understanding how we put forth this effort, doing all this work to understand where we are in space, and then bringing in that ease, bringing in that relaxation, which sounds so counterintuitive. But we do have the ability to create that in our bodies and in our mind. We do have the ability to increase our breath capacity and to use our breath to affect our nervous system so that our nervous system can tell our bodies in these muscularly engaged states to find a little bit of relaxation. That's the exciting part about yoga. That's where you improve your practice. That's where you start to see shifts become more and more visible and not so subtle. And it can be just frustrating and distracting because no, you're not going to see gains and improvements overnight. You might feel differently and that's great, but physically and visually, you're not necessarily going to see these huge improvements right away. You've got to keep coming back to the mat. You've got to keep practicing. You've got to keep asking these questions. You've got to stay open-minded, have a curious mind, try different teachers, try different classes, try different approaches, and continue that systematic awareness. Where are my feet? Where are my joints? How am I engaging my muscles? What do I feel? What do I not feel? This is how you improve your practice. So let me know in the comments below on Facebook. Connect with me, send me an email if you have any questions. If you want to share some of your stories about how you found to improve your practice or how this resonates with you. I love, love, love teaching people how to improve their practice, and it's really hard. And that's why the light bulb moments, those moments after a period of a year of working so hard, is so gratifying and so satisfying for the student and for the teacher. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, for thinking about your body in a different way, for integrating everything in your body, in your mind, in your breath. I'm excited to teach more soon, and I'll see you on the mat or off the mat sometime in the near future. Namaste.